Welcome to our presentation of Guatemala's Strategic Information Systems. Today we're going to talk about our experience in Guatemala, how we've been able to establish a strategy that allows for the implementation and use of strategic information systems to support social development programs in the country. To start the story, we should talk about what happened before we started this project. Before our health and education policy project, a previous project had this responsibility, and they had been training people for a long time. We did a diagnostic when we first got started, and they had trained about 900 people. Of all those trained, we found only 5 active users. So when you think about return on investment, that was a very poor result. With our project, with the Health and Education Policy Project, and now with the Health and Education Policy Plus, we took a different approach, and we haven't done any training thus far. What are the results? Instead of 5 active users, we have over 60,000. These numbers come from Google Statistics, so we have the evidence to back this up. So what happened? Why such a difference? The project before us took a different approach to strategic information systems development. And they were basically technology based. So they would look at what technology was available, what they thought that could be useful, and they focus on the technology and then try to train the user so they could work with the technology they selected. We took a different approach. We have developed our system with a user-centered approach. Now here we look at the user, what their capabilities are, what their needs are, and then we look for the technology that can respond to those needs. When you're working on a user-based approach, you're looking to develop user empowerment. What do we mean by that? We basically mean a user that's independent, that doesn't have to rely on other people or technology people to be able to reach the information, who can customize the information to whatever needs he has without having to have the system changed in any way. So what did we do? Well, we based our work in 4 important strategies. First of all is governance, that we're going to talk a little bit about later. But basically it means that you have a legal framework that allows for the system to function without having to call in favors or having to wait for things to happen. Things are mandated by the governance framework, so they happen when they need to happen because it is the law. We also took a long time to study about usability and introduce usability guidelines in the products that we developed. Because we have done a good work on usability, we do not need to train people. Systems are very intuitive, so the user basically starts interacting with the tools, and then he can work without having to have anybody teach him how to do so. Data quality means that we are very careful making sure that if we're developing statistics and indicators, they do reflect accurately what the information is showing. And openness is a very wide term. It means open systems, open software, open architecture, and that information is available freely for people whenever they need it. Now, based on these strategies, we have developed 4 different sets of tools. First off, we have tools based on business intelligence principles that we have applied in the social development context. We use guided analytics to be able to guide the user to what information he needs and to guide him in the understanding of what the data is actually showing. Data mobility means that you can take the information with you. You don't need to be in your office. You don't need to be in your computer to be able to work with the system. And what if planning is basically scenario planning. You can see at what happens if a decision is made, how will that reflect on the results or the investment that you need to make. Now, for the tools based on business intelligence, we have developed 2 main systems. One is the National Social Information System. This is a large system we developed. It integrates around 200 indicators from different sectors. What's very important is that it integrates information from 16 different government institutions. These institutions are independent, so getting them to agree on what information should be shown when things like that has been very important. We have developed what is our most popular system, which is the national education indicator system. Now, this system is very much alike to the National Social Information System, but focuses specifically in education. It has some 50 or 60 indicators included. But not only does it have the indicators, in this case, we also have a report generator. So basically, the user decides what information he wants to look at this particular time, and the generator will produce that information and customize it to specific parameters that the user decided to use. But also, not only does it show information on the national level, it goes all the way down to the school level, and that's very important. We're going to see a small video right now that sort of explains the features of how the system works. What we're going to see is a demo site that we have translated into English. The live sites exist, but they are in Spanish. Now, the National Social Indicator System shows information from 8 different sectors. You can see how it's changing from different sectors: education, health, economy, coverage, and whatever. If you click on a specific one, it opens that specific dashboard. So here we have the specific indicators for the health sector. They basically illustrate the state of health in Guatemala. We have a number of indicators. You can see things like life expectancy by gender, percentage of birth assisted by qualified personnel, things like vaccination, or the incidence of certain illnesses like tuberculosis or malaria, and things like that. The maps illustrate how severe a specific problem can be, like infant mortality or mortality in children under 5 years, or maternal mortality. So you can see them by department, and you see some magnifying lenses on some of the indicators. That means that there's a breakdown of that information to a more detailed level. We see the information icon. That basically, if you click on it, will show you the information of the indicators that we just saw. We have the list of indicators, and for each indicator, you will see this definition, the source, so people can look at that and have a better idea of how the information is being analyzed, and they can cross-check the information and do their own research, whatever. We also have, like I mentioned, the National Education Indicator System. This is education specific. So basically, indicators are organized in 4 different sections. You see context indicators, resource indicators, internal efficiency indicators, and learning achievement indicators. That's on the top part of the screen. On the lower side, you will see more specific information, like the school report card that will give you information of a specific school, for instance, the report generator that we mentioned, and a download section where you can, for instance, download the databases used to calculate the indicators. If you click on one of those sectors, then you can see, for instance, the internal efficiency indicators. There are the magnifying lenses that I mentioned. So we click on that and we have a breakdown. We have a timeline of 5 years of the specific indicator, but you can customize the information. Here we chose a department and municipality. So now we see the indicators for that specific municipality. But not only do you see the information for the timeline for those indicators like retention and completion rates. If you look at the lower part of the screen, you can see that the data has been contextualized. So you can see how the indicator for Huehuetenango, San Gaspar Shield, which is the municipality that we chose for elementary schools, compares to the department average and the national average. So that gives you an idea of how you're doing in that municipality. If you're doing better, if you're doing worse. We can see that this municipality is well below the national and departmental levels, so there's some work to be done to improve that situation here. If we click on return, we go back to the dashboard that we had, and we can go back to the menu. If we were to click on the databases, you can see here a list of the sections the indicators are organized in. You choose on a particular one, then you see all the databases that are being used to produce those indicators. So people can basically download that information and take it with them and do their own analysis, whatever they wish to do. We have them in 3 different formats. We have it in Excel, we have it for SPSS and comma separated. So the users can use the format that best works for them. Regarding guided analytics, like I mentioned, this is a type of tool that enables the users to answer their own questions. But what's most important is that it's focused on a specific problem. The systems that we saw before, they are more general information. They show you the overview of the whole sector. But these ones, the business intelligence tools, are more descriptive, whereas the guided analytic tools focus on a specific problem. And basically it allows the user to drill down through the information to specific. A decision can be made to improve whatever problem you are looking and analyzing at that moment. If we look at the video that we have for this type of tool, we have an example here of one of the tools that we've developed. This is the teacher demand analysis. So basically you see the situation in multi-grade classrooms in the country. You can see them by municipality. Red means that there is a higher percentage of multi-grade classrooms in that municipality. And green means there's a lower one. We see some filters on top, so that means you can basically focus on a given department or municipality if you wanted to do that. And area means urban and rural schools, so you can focus on which of the two you want to analyze at that particular moment. Now, these are multi-grade classrooms. That means we have a classroom with just one teacher, but more than one grade working in it at the same time. And in the right side of the screen, you see the most frequent combinations, grade combinations that are being used. Now, from a quality education standpoint, you would want first grade never to be paired with a different grade, basically because students in first grade do not know how to read or write yet. So they are not independent learners. So you want to avoid having first grade combined with any other grade. And we see here that we have, for instance, first grade and second grade together. That's a very bad combination. We also have first, second, and third. So those are the things that allow you to start to understand what's happening and what needs to be solved. You would want not to have that combination, for instance. Now, if we look at what's behind the magnifying lens, we find a new dashboard that will show you the most frequent grade combinations for a specific department and municipality. So we choose the department that we want to look at, we choose the municipality, and it updates the information to show that we have 33 schools with multi-grade classrooms in this municipality. We also see that we have 11 that combine 5th and 6th grade, which is the most popular combination, and the student load for teachers with that grade combination. So we see that there's very little overload of students for that combination. On the right side of the screen, you will find the list of schools that have that specific problem. So you're starting to focus at a level where you can actually make a decision to solve a specific problem with multi-grade schools. If we click on a school from the list, we will see a breakdown of the information for that school. So we see that in this case, we have a school that has 5 teachers, a total of 164 students, but that we see there's overload in 5th and 6th grade. One teacher has 46 students, which is more than you would hope to have. You can see that first grade is very well distributed. It only has 24 students per teacher, which is a good ratio of students per teacher. Data mobility focuses on allowing the users to carry the information with them wherever they go. So these are information tools that seek to allow anytime, anywhere access to the information. They support local level advocacy and decision making, basically because you have the information in your pocket, in your mobile device. When you're visiting, for instance, a school to do supervision or follow up on what's happening at the local level. We have developed 4 different apps at this time. We have 2 that are focused on education and 2 that are focused on health. The first app that we have, we call Escuel app. It's basically a way to carry the information of over 30,000 schools in Guatemala in your pocket. You can install it in your Android or iOS mobile device and carry it with you wherever you go. The main menu for this app basically allows you to identify the school that you want to work with through different methods. One is the search by map. You can also search with given parameters. For instance, you can choose to see the schools of a given department, municipality, sector, level, or whatever specifics you want to look for. If you know the school ID, you can just enter that directly and it will show you the information for that school. If we were to use, for instance, the search by map option, it will show you all the schools that are located at a 5-kilometer radius from your current location using your GPS. If you click on a flag, it opens a window with 3 options. The first opens the information for the school. If you were to click on the second option, it would open Google Maps or Waze or whatever you have installed in your phone, and it will give you directions on how to get there. But let's go for the open option right now. We now get to see the information of the school. You see the name of the school, that it's an open school, it hasn't been closed. And you also see information on enrollment. But more important, you see things like the name of the school principal or the supervisor that is working with that school. You can look at the information of registered students by gender. You can focus on specific students like female students. You see how many were enrolled at the beginning of the school year, and by the end of the school year, how many were repeaters, non-repeaters, and how many got promoted, non-promoted, or retired before the end of the school year. You can also see internal efficiency indicators like promotion, non-promotion. But not only do you get to see the information of the school, you also, once again, are able to look at the context of that information because it compares the school indicator with the national, departmental, and even the municipal average. You can also see the list of the teachers that work in that school because this is public information. You can see their names. So if you were to visit a school, you can ask for a teacher by name, or you can see if for some reason somebody didn't show up to work, and you can follow up if you're doing local advocacy. You can also see the list of the administrative staff if there were anyone in that specific school. And finally, you see information of the school support programs that the Ministry of Education provides. So you can see how much money this school received this year for free education, for school supplies, or the school feeding program, and also how much money the teachers got so they could buy teaching resources, what we call in Guatemala the teaching bag. And finally, you can do things like share the information through the social media. You see the icon in the bottom, but also there's an option to report what we call events. So if you were to visit a school and that school was closed for that day, through this option, you basically click on the event that you're reporting, and then you give the date of your visit, and that will send a message to the Ministry of Education and advocacy groups so they can follow up on why that school was closed. Another example of apps that we have developed is called Sana GT. This app has information on chronic malnutrition in Guatemala. You can see the main menu showing here, where you can basically look at the municipality report, or you can look at specific data organized by themes. If you click at the municipality report, you have the nutritional vulnerability level for that municipality. You can see the municipality that we chose. It's shown with a darker border on the map that you see in your app. And it also shows all other municipalities in that department. So basically you start to look at the information for the municipality, how many inhabitants it has, how many of those are between the ages of 6 to 9 years old, and also that 40% of those children are in a chronic malnutrition state. So that's a huge problem in this municipality. It also shows the description of the index that we use to follow chronic malnutrition in Guatemala, and it gives you the breakdown of that index, how it's calculated. So it gives you specific indicators that are used to calculate the index. And finally, in the lower part of the screen, you will find a list of suggested interventions for the reduction of the malnutrition. So you click on any of those suggested interventions, and it will open a PDF file that explains what can be done at the municipal level to seek to overcome that problem. If you were to look at data by theme, you basically choose the indicator that you are interested in, and it will show you a screen with that indicator with the different breakdowns that are available for it. So for instance, we see here that indicator by sex, age, or area of residence. Not only can you see the graph, but if you click on the icon that has a grid on it, you can see the actual data for the graph if you prefer that. There's always the option to share through social media, depending on what you have installed in your device. And there's this option that we call a bookmark that basically tags the graph that you chose, and then there's a shortcut created so you can access it without having to go through the menu. Regarding what-if planning, we developed a set of tools that allow scenario planning of mid and long-term goals. So basically you can visualize expected results based on a set of parameters that you can interactively choose with the tool. Here we have an example of a tool that we developed. We call it the macro planning budget tool. So basically this can be used by a ministry like the Ministry of Health or Education to plan the investments that they're going to be doing the next year. On the left side of the screen, you can see a set of parameters like how much money is available for spending and how much of that you have already allocated for specific programs or projects. In the middle sector is where you actually interact with the tool. You can choose the program or sub-program, project or activity, all the way down to a specific goal that you want to achieve. Now, goals will have an unitary cost and the quantity of those units that you want to achieve. So, for instance, if you're looking at, in education, at textbooks, you can change the number of textbooks that you want to purchase in the given year. And when you change that quantity, it not only calculates the cost for that activity, but it updates the allocated amount that you have distributed already through different activities and how much you still have available for distribution. And finally, on the right side of the screen, you can visualize how much money you are allocating for specific programs. So you can be aware that if you give a program more money, you are actually taking away from another one. Now, the experience of implementing this in Guatemala has taught us a few things. One of the first lessons that we have is that governance is not optional. You need to establish a governance framework if you want to have a well-oiled strategic information system, especially if you have a system that depends on different organizations for its data collection. In our case, we started with just 3 ministries, but because of our own success, I have to say, we saw this system expand to 16 different government institutions. That represents a different challenge that cannot be overcome without a strong governance framework. Another important lesson is that focusing on usability really pays off. In our case, we started with the education indicator system, and after we launched it, we would usually have from 100 to maybe 200 users per day. We followed up with how the system was working and what the users were demanding, and we did something very important. We launched the school report card. We saw a tremendous change in system usage after we did that, and we moved from maybe 200 users per day to over 500 users per day. You can see in the graph how we peaked to almost 3,000 users once we launched the school report card. And if you compare the different years, the yellow line represents the first year, and you look at the third year, which is the red one, you can see that the level of system usage has increased tremendously because we have been responding to what the user is demanding. And because of the usability guidelines, we haven't, like we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we haven't trained users at all. Usability allows for user adoption without having to invest on training and getting people together with the costs that come with that. A third lesson is that openness allows for low operational cost. If you remember the beginning of the presentation, we talked about having only 5 active users, and the software, the technology that was being used at that time would require a payment of over $400,000 per year just to maintain licensing up to date. With the system we developed later, not only did we move from 5 users to over 60,000, but we lowered the yearly maintenance cost from $400,000 to only $1,200. So if you're considering return on investment, this is really the way to go. And finally, we learned that to allow for long-term sustainability, support systems need to be in place. In our case, we have developed 3 support systems. The first one we call the Automated Data Transfer System, which basically does what it says. It allows for automatic transfer of information from the 16 government institutions to the central system without the need of user intervention. The system is in place and works because we have the governance framework that we have talked about. Second, we developed the Institutional Strengthening System. What the system does is first perform a diagnostic of the institutions that participate in the system, and it evaluates their readiness to efficiently participate in the integrated information system. And not only does it tell you how they are doing or how well prepared they are, but it also develops an institutional strengthening plan, which has a list of recommendations of what needs to be done to improve their readiness to work with the system. Now, for each of the recommendations, they will also get a link to a resource that resides in the third system that we developed, which is the knowledge management system. Now, this system, not only does it have like the documents that you might need, reference documents, manuals, guidelines, policies, those things that are necessary to improve the system, but also it has a number of online courses that people can freely access where they can develop the capabilities that they need to do a better work with the system. Now, because of all those lessons that we were able to learn, we decided that it was important not to lose all that knowledge that was developed from that experience. When we first did the system, we didn't have much of a frame of reference that we could use. So we decided to develop one based on the experience in Guatemala. So we developed what we call the development methodology for an integrated information system. What we developed includes an easy-to-follow roadmap that gives you the steps that need to be followed to be able to develop the system. But not only does it tell you what to do, it actually gives you all the resources that are required for the implementation and even a set of tools for monitoring the system's development. The methodology and all the resources that it includes are available through a website that can be provided upon request. If you would like a deeper overview of the tools that we have developed, you can visit our demo sites. You can see here the links that you can use to access those tools. Like I said, these are the demo sites that we have translated into English to facilitate this sort of access. You can also download the apps. They are available in the Android Play Store and the Apple iStore. You can see the names of the apps. You can just do a search by name and you will find the link to download it. Those apps are available both in English and Spanish. You can just toggle the language that you want to be using. I would like to end this with just a reflection. There's a deep belief in us that there's nothing so terrible as activity without insight. Through these tools, we seek to develop insight. We seek to develop the understanding, the knowledge of what needs to be done to be able to solve the problems that we know that we are facing in health, education, and other sectors. I hope that you have found here what you were looking for, and if you would like further information, you can find the contact information at the end of this video. Thank you so much for your time.